Welcome to Conversations with Tom Shorkey. Conversations explores the past, the present, and the future of the communities in which we live through the eyes of interesting individuals. Now let's join our host, Tom Shorkey.
Welcome to Conversations. I'm Tom Shorkey, your host for today's program. Our guest today has been steeped in community involvement throughout his entire business career, a lifelong St. Clair resident, and when we get into our discussion today and you actually find out how many different boards and organizations he's had a leadership role on, you're going to wonder if the man has slept at all in the last 30 years or so. It is my pleasure today to welcome Roy Klecha to the program. Roy?
Great.
Now, Roy, most people know Roy Klecha from your banking career in the community, but let's back up just a little bit first. Are you a St. Clair kid at heart? I mean, is this where you grew up?
This is where I grew up, and born in 52.
Born in 52, and what part of town did you live in? Where were you?
Actually, I was in East China Township, but I don't think we ever referred to it that way back then. Everything was always St. Clair, so just on the other side of the Little League field on Hathaway Street.
Well, and it's great that the old Little League field that everybody in St. Clair knows as Klecha Field,
Yeah.
and you could say that's because you were such an all-star baseball player, but actually that's named for your uncle. Is that correct?
That's my Uncle Joe. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Joe Klecha, my dad's brother. But yeah, we spent a lot of years there, a lot of time there, even before it was called the Joe Klecha Park. But it was a terrific monument to him when they did that.
Well, it has to be neat.
Yeah.
Now, St. Mary's along the way, you went to high school at Sacred Heart in Detroit, and then opted for the University of Michigan. Now, why would a 18-year-old guy pick U of M at that time?
Oh man, Tom, it wasn't. I had my sights set on. I should say I had some options set on a few different choices at that point, and I can recall meeting with our counselor at school at that point. Happened to be a priest, obviously,
Yeah.
at Sacred Heart, but he was very knowledgeable about the different choices out there. He obviously knew my academic, my academics there, and what I was able to do and what I had achieved. And he said, "Right, I don't know why you're even thinking about all these other options. The University of Michigan is the only one for you." And I guess that kind of sealed it for me.
So, like all young Wolverines, you probably fell in love with Ann Arbor. What did you get a degree in?
My degree was in economics. Yeah, a bachelor in economics there.
Well,
Yeah.
when a man gets done with a bachelor's degree from U of M in economics and he's going to set the world on fire, where was your first job?
You know, yeah, it's funny you do ask that, because at the point of, well, even as you know, prior to graduation, they bring in a lot of the recruitment firms and things of that sort. And so right at that point, I was starting at the recruitment firm, starting to meet with some of the banks and actually some different economic firms. But I was frankly kind of intrigued by the banking possibilities. And so went through the recruitment. Nothing actually happened through that process, but graduated, and it kind of, just as you were saying, enjoyed living in Ann Arbor. Well, I loved it. I mean, once you're there, you can't help but love it. And I looked for some jobs in banks there, but fortunately, as it turns out, wasn't able to pick up a job there in Ann Arbor in a bank. I think with everybody else coming out looking for the same thing, yeah, I was one of many.
And so where did you land?
And so what happened is I came back home, back to St. Clair. Actually, you know, it's funny. I received 2 job offers. When I came back home, Michigan National, which was up in Port Huron that way, offered me a job, and it was the way they started people out there was as a collector. You get out on the road and you start, and that's the way you learn the banking. Came down here. I was fortunate enough to talk to Frank Moore and Jack Vardy, and I was able to land a job with a commercial and savings bank, and boy, just never looked back. It was what a tremendous
opportunity. And for our listeners at home, Roy is retiring at the end of the year as the Chief Executive Officer of Northstar Bank here in town on Fred Moore. But back in, what would that have been?
This was 1974.
1974, yeah. Came back home to work at the bank. You know, I think it was Garth Brooks that had a song that some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. So you didn't end up in a bank in Ann Arbor. You didn't end up being a collector for Michigan National. You got a job at Commercial and Savings, which was really a phenomenal group of people, and it probably opened many doors for you in your career.
Tom, just as you say, it was such good fortune to be able to come home and work for a group like Frank Moore, Jack Vardy. Those are the two people that I actually interviewed with to get the job. Actually, as I recall now, I was even able to work some with Frank Moore Sr.
Oh,
because
really?
At that particular point in time, he was the one actually running the trust department there. So just as you say, coming to a town like St. Clair and working with the people who were the leaders in this area and were involved in anything you could think of was just such a good way to start. I probably really didn't ever realize how good I had it until later on, and looking back, what a tremendous thing.
Well, I think the Commercial and Savings, and I think Algonac Savings was an affiliate or the same.
All part of the Moore family stock.
So you ended up, after working St. Clair Commercial and Savings, you went down to Algonac, and you were the president in waiting, or what?
That's exactly the case.
How many years did you work down in Algonac?
I was there from 1988 till about 1996 when old Kent came in.
So about the time you became the president of Algonac Savings, 6 months later, old Kent knocked on the door and said...
Well, that's exactly when old Kent came in and took... So the process was already going on at the point that I was the president. So, yeah, in 1996, the transition was becoming the case.
And I think what's good, before we get into all your community involvement, which is really why you're sitting in the big chair today,
Yeah.
But I think the seeds were sown in your mind during that career in St. Clair and Algonac that community banking was special, and that as it has appeared in banking that, you know, like the big banks were taking over a lot of small ones, but you kind of had that vision or that dream of starting up a community bank. How did that present itself?
Well, Tom, just as you say, although Old Kent was a good bank, they weren't the community bank that I was used to, or the community bank that I thought would work well within the communities that we were in that way. So when I did leave there, the first thing I did, which I guess was kind of natural, was look at some other communities to see if they needed a leader that I could fit in that way. Didn't play out that way, and then after a couple of years, frankly, I had the good fortune of coming across a group in Bad Axe, Northstar Bank, that had just opened the Northstar Bank earlier that year in 2001. I was meeting them in 2001. Actually was able to sell them my dream of a community bank in St. Clair County. And, well, it's...
The rest was history.
Yeah,
but
just
that
as
was,
they say.
And that was Seaway Bank.
And that turned out to be Seaway Community Bank.
On Fred Moore, and it remained Seaway just up to a year or two ago.
2013.
2013, and it also became a Northstar.
That's correct. And we did have the good fortune in opening Seaway to bring back so many people from the years at Commercial and Savings Bank. I think you had mentioned Bonnie Sumner, and frankly, I was able to bring back a number of people from Algonac Savings Bank, especially when we opened the Algonac office, to bring back. So the people in those communities really felt like it was the resurgence of Commercial and Savings Bank here in Algonac Savings Bank in Algonac. And so Seaway Community Bank did really thrive that way based on truly being a community.
For our viewers, Roy, started that banking in the mid-70s, going to retire this year.
Yeah.
We all know banking has changed, but what are some of the biggest differences from 1975 to 2016?
Well, obviously, Tom, and as you know, the number one thing is the technology is just out of this world as compared to what it once was. The fact that somebody can take their phone and take a picture of a deposit and ship it in and have their money in their account, it's just amazing stuff that way. Versus the days when I was starting in, the customer contact, I mean, there was no question about the need for brick and mortar back in those days because the customer had to come in, and that's what we were used to. We enjoyed waiting on the customer, dealing with them, dealing with their issues, dealing with their successes and things of that sort. I guess the other major thing that kind of goes hand in hand with that is the belief in the customers and there wasn't quite so much paperwork involved in making sure the customer had the character and the trustworthiness to make the deal happen. As is the case today, it's very different where it's a whole lot riskier going in and making that determination whether the deal, especially some of the lending that we do at this point in time, that's so magnified as compared to what it was before, to make that determination.
Is it possible for community banks to be successful and keep their niche and hold their own when the big boys are out there just pushing their products?
You know, it is more and more difficult, Tom, and I guess that was the third key I was going to mention to you, because the regulation that has been enforced, I know on businesses in general, but on banking, especially with what we went through in that 2008, 2009 situation, the regulation makes it such that it is so difficult for a bank less than, probably $500 million to be able to have the resources,
have enough people to
get that job done. That is really the case with that. Yeah.
Well, you know, besides and we know banking is your passion, and it has been for 40 years, but
yeah.
I think the thing that our viewers need to listen to, and I might even have to refer to my list because I don't want to miss any.
Well,
I want to talk about the different organizations that you've had roles in on their boards, leadership, whatever, and not drive-bys, not like for a year or two, but long-term relationships. United Way, Community Foundation, East China School Board, St. Clair City Council, St. Clair Theater Guild, St. John's River District Hospital. I don't know if I missed any in there or not, but it is, you really provide a lot of service to this community. And I just want to pick a few of those because we don't have time to talk about them all. But I think the message out there for our viewers is you can have a full-time job, a career, a lot of responsibilities, but still make time to maybe give back to your community a little bit. Let's talk Community Foundation first.
Okay. And Tom, even before you start in, I do want to just comment in general, just where you were going. I think business leaders, I think it's a must. Now, frankly, as a banker, it's almost an expectation that you become involved in these in all these in service organizations in general. But I was very fortunate to have the people, the resources that allowed me to do it, and frankly, I enjoyed doing it, and becoming involved was just part of it. So I'll just say, although it was a love of mine, it was also appropriate for me to be doing that in my job.
And I think it was, and I did think of one off the top of my head that I missed in my list is your longtime Rotarian responsibilities.
Yeah, that's true.
But the Community Foundation of St. Clair County, which people will often see that something's underwritten or partially, like our new plaza in front of the mall had some foundation involvement. The St. Clairian has some foundation involvement. The Little League field, or the new complex, they are obviously active throughout the county and especially in all of our little local communities. But tell our viewers a little bit about the St. Clair County Community Foundation. I think it's what they do and how they do it is pretty fabulous.
It's tremendous, Tom, and just as you say, when I was first involved, I guess it would have to be something in the vicinity of 12 or 15 years ago, or something of that sort. The understanding in being involved in a community foundation was taking applications for giving requests and determining if you can give them the money, right? That was the foundation. Any more, that not to say that still is an important piece of it, but the Community Foundation of St. Clair County, with its leadership, with the members that are involved, they touch on every facet of life in the county. It's just truly a situation where trying to determine what can we do to make life better in St. Clair County, and becoming a facilitation, becoming an idea generator, and just gathering the appropriate people together and then making it happen. So it's hard, and just as you were doing there, it's hard for you to think of a part of life going on out here that hasn't been touched by the Community Foundation, or frankly, doesn't have someone within our community involved in the Community Foundation somehow. They've done just a tremendous job.
And they have, and I think for our viewers, it is the money, the resources that the foundation have been gifts from other people. It isn't, there's no tax dollars involved, and then what it is a group of people who manage the funds very well, and that then provides opportunities throughout the county.
Tom, you did a good job of defining that, and you're correct. Matter of fact, going back again, when I was first becoming involved, I believe the assets, the amount of money involved that they were managing was something in the vicinity of probably $10 million or so, and now they're in excess of $50 million. So just as you're saying, the donors are just tremendous out there, opening up the funds to have them available within the community, and then the people involved in the Community Foundation itself making that determination. How do we utilize these? Again, not necessarily just to build something or to give it, but what can we do to make life better in the county that way? I know in Port Huron specifically, that Blue Water River Walk, what a tremendous example of what they could do with that type of a situation. And then closer to home, obviously, with the plaza down in the courtyard there in the mall. Tremendous.
Tremendous. It is.
Tremendous.
Well, Roy, we've got a man sitting here that I'm talking to. Has been through the school board thing, probably a couple terms, 6 or 8 years. You've seen it all. You were on the River District Hospital Board back when it was just River District Hospital, and then that segued into St. John's River District.
Correct.
Rotarian, mainly in Algonac, which I thought was interesting because you went to Algonac, and to be part of that community, you became a Rotarian there, and then even after you left Algonac as a place of business, you continued with all the Rotary efforts in that community. It seems like you've always had a little something extra on your plate. I want to talk to you about one of your newer ventures, and that's the St. Clair Theater Guild. Now, what's your role with the Guild?
Okay, Tom, that's a good question, and I'll sort of open that up by telling you one of the reasons that, they asked me to become a board member on the St. Clair Theater Guild, and one of the reasons I would consider that is because I enjoy theater. I especially enjoy plays and musicals, and my wife and I have a tendency to see quite a few of them, so we do enjoy that. And so I'd been a donor over the years to the St. Clair Theater Guild. I'm sure they picked up on that. They asked me to become a board member. So joining the group, I found that there was a lack of planning going on, and they asked if I'd pick up the strategic planning part of it. And so that's something that I've just taken on with the group, is doing some strategic planning and trying to determine with a group, with this planning group, what can we do to make the St. Clair Theater Guild a strong community force that people would enjoy in this market. When you look around and you see the successes in some of the communities around us, you have the Marine City with the Snug and the Riverbank, the Richmond and the Port Huron has a couple of different community theaters that way. Hopefully bringing that back to St. Clair as well. So that's and we're right in the midst of that planning to try to bring
challenge,
that back.
But the Theater Guild in St. Clair has been an integral part of this community for so many years.
Exactly.
But and sometimes organizations, like we see it with so many churches or so many service organizations, people start to get a little bit older, and you don't get the young people infused into the situation. So with that, I would like to ask you this.
Excellent point, though.
With all the hats you've worn, if you could give some advice to some of our young people, our 20, 30-somethings, young families, what kind of advice or words of wisdom would you like to share?
Okay, Tom, I certainly from the aspect of their employment, make sure you're loving your job and doing it well. But then, as far as the community goes, become involved and become an enthusiastic, involved person. Now, you did bring up the fact that I'm involved in a number of things. I had the opportunity to do that. I had the love and the opportunity to do that. You don't necessarily have to become involved in multiple organizations to do a job well. Pick the ones that are most important to you, the ones that you see have what you believe will have the biggest impact on your life and on the community, and what you think is important, and then get involved, stay involved, and be enthusiastically involved.
What makes St. Clair a good community to live in?
Boy, Tom, St. Clair, it's always been so much fun, but it frankly, I think it's even getting better. I think when we were talking a little earlier, I related to the movie Cheers, where it's difficult to be around town and not to become involved in conversations with people you know all the time, that you live and work and everything with, and be it at Neiman's or at any of the stores in town or just down on the boardwalk, everybody's involved that way. I think I mentioned to you, I recently remarried my wife, and she's come to live with me in St. Clair, and she's loving the St. Clair life. And so it's good to see that when you can bring somebody in and they feel that community spirit as well, because there's a lot of it here.
How does Roy Klecha want to be remembered?
Yeah, I always felt that my father was a tremendous example for me in my life, and I always looked forward to how would he do the things he did, and he just did everything so well, everything with a smile. And one of the things he always mentioned, and people mentioned about him, was being a professional. And I always thought, I feel the same way. That's the way I'd like to see it as well, to be thought of as a professional.
Roy, I think our community would realize, most of them have already known it, but you talk about professional, involved, and effective in the things that you've taken on in your life. On behalf of WatchCTV.org and Channel 6, thanks for being our guest today. And for our listeners or viewers at home, you can go to our website, WatchCTV.org, click on shows, click on conversations. If you would like to see this again, we will continue to have people such as Roy Klecha join us on the program to share a little bit about what makes our area a great place to live. Thanks again, Roy.
Tom, thank you. I appreciate it very much.
You've been watching Conversations with Tom Shorkey. Conversations explores the past, the present, and the future of the communities in which we live through the eyes of interesting individuals. If you have an idea for a future conversation, please contact us at www.watchctv.org. Thanks for watching Conversations with Tom Shorkey.